The signal came through at 3:47 a.m., Seoul time. Had been monitoring the deep space arrays for 6 hours straight, her eyes tired from staring at screens that showed nothing but cosmic static. She was reaching for her coffee when the computer made a sound it had never made before. A sharp, urgent beep that made her spine go rigid. The waveform on her screen was wrong. Not wrong like a malfunction, wrong like something that shouldn't exist. "Computer, analyze signal," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The computer processed for 30 seconds. That alone was unusual. Most signals took milliseconds to analyze. Unknown origin, unknown language, mathematical pattern detected, translating. Watched as the alien symbols converted into something humans could understand. Her hands started shaking. It was a distress call. She hit the emergency button. Within minutes, the quiet observation room filled with people. Captain arrived first, still buttoning his uniform jacket. He looked at the screen and his expression changed from annoyed to shocked. "Is this real?" he asked. "I've checked it 3 times," said. "It's real. Someone out there is dying and they're asking for help." More people arrived. Scientists, military officers, translators. They all crowded around station, reading the message that had traveled across the stars. The message was simple and terrible. A species called the was being destroyed. An empire called the Dominion had attacked their worlds, burning their cities, killing their people. The had found an old human probe drifting in space, something Earth had launched centuries ago. They had traced it back and sent this message as a last desperate hope. They didn't expect an answer. Their message said so. They thought humans were probably primitive, maybe not even alive anymore, but they had no one else to ask. "How far away are they?" asked. 47 light years, a scientist answered. "With our fastest ships, we could reach them in 3 weeks." Admiral arrived an hour later. He was old, with gray hair and a face marked by years of hard decisions. He read the message in silence, then looked around the room. "How many people know about this?" he asked. "Just us," said 17 people. "Keep it that way for now. I need to make some calls." The admiral left. The others waited, couldn't stop looking at the message. Somewhere out there, people were dying, people who had reached out to Earth as their last hope. By morning, the United Nations Space Command had assembled an emergency council. Representatives from every major nation gathered in the secure conference room beneath the Seoul headquarters. The debate started immediately. "We can't risk it," the European delegate said. "We've hidden from the galaxy for 70 years. If we reveal ourselves now, we could become targets." "They're dying," the African delegate countered. "We have the power to help. What does that say about us if we don't?" "It says we're smart," someone else argued. "We don't know what's out there. This could be a trap." Admiral stood at the head of the table. He let them argue for an hour before he spoke. "I've spent 30 years preparing Earth's defenses," he said. "Building ships in secret, training soldiers, creating weapons, all because I knew this day would come. The day we met someone else in the universe." He paused. "I didn't think it would be like this." Doctor stood up. She was the lead, the person who had spent her life studying what alien life might be like. She had kind eyes but a voice like steel. "If we hide now, we'll hide forever," she said. "Every species that joins the galaxy faces a choice. How do they introduce themselves? As victims begging for mercy, as merchants looking for profit, or as something else?" "What are you suggesting?" someone asked. "I'm suggesting we introduce ourselves as protectors, as people who answer distress calls. The galaxy is clearly dangerous. The message proves that. So let's show everyone that there's at least one species willing to fight for those who can't fight for themselves." "That's idealistic nonsense," the European delegate said. "We could lose everything." "We could," agreed. "Or we could gain allies, friends, a place in the galaxy that's built on respect, not fear." The room fell silent. Admiral looked around at the faces of Earth's leaders. "I want a vote," he said. "Do we answer the call?" The vote took 20 minutes. It was close. 32 for 28 against. Earth would answer. Admiral returned to the command center, was still at her station, along with Captain and a dozen others who had stayed through the debate. "Send a response," the Admiral said. "Tell that help is coming." Fingers flew across her keyboard. She composed a simple message in the same mathematical language they had used. Message received. Help is coming. Hold on, Earth. She sent it into the void. It would take 47 years to reach the at light speed, but she sent it anyway. Because that's what you did when someone asked for help. Then Admiral gave the order that would change everything. "Activate the fleet. I want every ship we have ready to launch in 72 hours. Contact the lunar shipyards. Tell them it's time to reveal what we've been building." Looked shocked. "You're sending everything." "Not everything, but enough to make a difference." The Admiral's eyes were hard. They sent their distress call to Earth because they had no other choice. They're about to find out what kind of species lives on what kind of people survive on a planet that tries to kill them every single day. He walked to the main viewport. Through it, Earth hung in space, blue and beautiful and deadly. A world with crushing gravity, violent weather, shifting continents and creatures that had spent millions of years learning to hunt and kill. Humanity had survived all of it. They had thrived, and now they were going to show the galaxy what that meant. "Prepare the fleet," Admiral said quietly. "Show them what can do." Across Earth's solar system, hidden bases received the signal. On the far side of the moon, massive hangar doors began to open. Near Mars, ships that had been hidden in asteroid fields powered up their engines. In orbit around Jupiter's moons, weapons that had never been fired came online. Humanity was going to war. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The lunar shipyards had been hidden for 40 years, built into the craters on the far side of the moon, where Earth's telescopes couldn't see and where no satellite ever passed. Now, for the first time, they opened to the void. Commander stood in the observation deck and watched as the first ship emerged. It was massive, bigger than anything humanity had ever built before. The dreadnought Sol's hammer was 3 kilometers long, covered in armor plating that could withstand impacts from micrometeorites traveling at thousands of kilometers per hour. It had been built to survive, built to fight. "Beautiful, isn't she?" said Engineer standing beside him. "Terrifying," replied. "I hope we're doing the right thing." "We're answering a distress call. That's always the right thing." More ships followed. Carriers that held hundreds of fighter craft, destroyers bristling with weapons, supply ships filled with ammunition, fuel, and spare parts. 53 ships total. It was half of Earth's entire secret fleet. Pulled up a hologram showing the fleet formation. "We'll need to drill them. They've never worked together in combat." "We have 3 weeks," said. "Make it count." The training began immediately. Ships ran combat simulations, practicing formations they had only studied in theory. Fighter pilots launched and landed hundreds of times, getting used to the carriers. Weapons crews fired test rounds into empty space, calibrating their systems. Lieutenant Sara ran the tactical briefings. She was young, only 26, but she had studied every battle in human history and every piece of data they had on alien technology. She stood in front of the assembled ship captains and showed them what they were up against. "The Dominion has been expanding for 300 years," she said. "They've conquered 47 different species. Their technology is focused on energy weapons and shields." She pulled up images that they had included in their distress call. "Their ships are fast but lightly armored. They rely on overwhelming numbers and shield technology." "What kind of shields?" someone asked. "Energy-dispersing fields. They're designed to deflect lasers and plasma weapons. According to they're nearly impenetrable." A murmur ran through the crowd. Captain raised his hand. Nearly impenetrable to what they've faced before. What about kinetic weapons? Sora smiled. That's our advantage. The shields are designed for energy weapons because that's what every species in the galaxy uses. We still use bullets. She pulled up a schematic of our main weapons accelerate physical projectiles to a fraction of light speed. The shields won't stop them because they're not designed to. We'll punch through their defenses like they're not even there. The mood in the room changed. Fear turned to confidence. They had an advantage, it might be enough. But Sora wasn't finished. Don't get cocky, they still outnumber us. Intelligence suggests they have over 500 ships blockading we're bringing 53. The math is bad. So what's the plan? Asked. Hit them hard and fast. Use our kinetic weapons to break their formation. Launch fighters to exploit the chaos. Board their command ships if we can. Make them afraid of us. Engineer took over the briefing. She showed them the weapon systems Earth had developed. That could fire 1,000-kilogram slugs, missiles with nuclear warheads, magnetic accelerators that could launch tungsten rods at incredible speeds, and close combat weapons for boarding parties, simple firearms that shot metal bullets. Why bullets? Someone asked. Why not lasers? Because lasers can be deflected, energy weapons can be absorbed, but a bullet doesn't care about shields, it just goes through. Pulled up combat footage from Earth's training exercises. Plus, we're stronger than most species out there. We evolved on a high-gravity world. Our soldiers can carry heavier weapons, wear heavier armor, and take more punishment. That's when Sergeant stood up. He was a Marine, built like a tank, with scars on his hands from 100 training exercises. My unit will handle boarding actions. We've been practicing in close-quarters combat for years. If we get inside their ships, they won't stand a chance. Watched the briefings and felt something he hadn't expected. Pride. These people were ready. Scared, yes, but ready. Over the next 3 weeks, the fleet became a weapon. Pilots learned to fly in formation, executing turns and dives that would have been impossible for species that evolved under gentler gravity. Their bodies could handle forces that would kill most aliens. They could pull maneuvers that enemy sensors would read as mistakes because no sane pilot would attempt them. The Marines trained in mock-ups of alien ships, learning to fight in zero gravity in tight corridors against targets they had never seen before. They practiced until their movements were automatic. Load, aim, fire, move, every motion drilled into muscle memory. Captain spent his time on Sol's hammer, learning every system, every backup, every weakness. He walked the corridors and talked to his crew. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes. Most of them had never left Earth's solar system before. Now they were about to jump 47 light years into a war zone. Are we ready? His first officer asked one night. No, said honestly, but we're going anyway. Doctor arrived at the fleet 3 days before launch. She wasn't military, but she insisted on coming. Someone needs to talk to the when we save them, she said. Someone who understands first contact protocol. Admiral didn't argue. He gave her quarters on the flagship and access to all the data they had. She spent her time learning their language, studying their culture, preparing for a meeting that might never happen if they lost the battle. The night before launch, the Admiral called a fleet-wide assembly. Every sailor, every Marine, every pilot linked into the communication system. 53 ships, 12,000 people. The entire video feed showed his face. I won't lie to you, said. What we're about to do is dangerous. We're jumping into unknown space to fight an enemy we've never met, to save people we've never seen. A lot of you might not come home. He paused, letting that sink in. But someone asked for help. They sent a message across the stars, not knowing if anyone would hear it, not knowing if anyone would care. We heard it, we care, and we're going to answer. Humanity has spent its entire history fighting nature, fighting each other, fighting to survive on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We got good at it. We got so good at it that now we can take that strength and use it for something better. We can fight for people who can't fight for themselves. So tomorrow, we jump. We go to war. And we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten innocent people while are listening. We show them that Earth answers the call. The fleet erupted in cheers, 12,000 voices shouting as one. The next morning, the ships formed up. Engines blazed to life. Jump drives charged, creating ripples in space-time that sensors could detect from millions of kilometers away. Admiral sat in his command chair and gave the order that would change history. All ships jump. Space tore open. 53 human warships vanished from the solar system, traveling faster than light toward a war that would decide Earth's place in the galaxy. The Dominion had no idea what was coming for them. But they were about to learn. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. For a moment, everyone on every ship simply stared at the screens. It looked like hell. Debris floated everywhere. Pieces of stations, ships, and things that might have once been cities. In the distance, several planets glowed with the orange light of fires burning on their surfaces. And surrounding the last inhabited planet was a massive fleet of alien ships. "Count them," Admiral ordered. 537 vessels, Lieutenant Sara reported. Her voice was steady, but her hands gripped her console. They're in a blockade formation around the... Captain looked at the tactical display on Sol's hammer. The enemy ships were sleek and curved, nothing like Earth's brutal, angular vessels. They looked fast, graceful, deadly. "They've detected us," the communications officer said, receiving a transmission. "Put it through." The voice that came through was translated by the computer. It sounded arrogant, amused. "Unidentified primitive craft. You have entered Dominion space. Leave now or be destroyed. This is your only warning." Admiral looked at the transmission for a long moment. Then he muted it. "All ships combat formation Delta. Weapons free. Let's see how primitive they think we are after this." The human fleet moved into position. Dreadnoughts at the front, carriers in the middle, destroyers protecting the flanks. It was a formation designed for brutal, close-quarters fighting. "They're not moving," Sara observed. "They think we're going to run." "Their mistake," said. "You have the honor, fire when ready." On the Sol's hammer, Captain took a deep breath. This was it, humanity's introduction to galactic warfare. He wanted to make it memorable. "Main, target the center of their formation. Fire." The ship shuddered as they unleashed its payload. A solid slug of tungsten, weighing 2,000 kilograms, accelerated to 12% the speed of light. It crossed the distance to the fleet in seconds. The aliens had time to raise their shields. Energy barriers flickered to life, designed to deflect and absorb energy weapons. They had stopped lasers and plasma fire for 300 years. They did nothing to stop solid metal. The tungsten slug punched through the first ship's shields like they weren't there. It went through the hull, through the interior, and out the other side. The ship exploded in a ball of flame. The slug kept going, hitting a second ship, then a third. 3 ships destroyed in one shot. The fleet erupted into chaos. "All ships open fire," Admiral ordered. The human fleet unleashed hell. From every dreadnought fired in sequence. Missiles launched from the destroyers, each carrying a nuclear warhead. The carriers opened their bays and hundreds of fighters poured out like angry hornets. They tried to respond. Energy weapons lanced across space, hitting the human ships. But Earth's vessels were built to withstand the punishment of armor plating absorbed hits that would have destroyed any other ship. What got through was stopped by secondary armor. "Shields down on Fury," Sara reported. "Hull integrity at 70%. They're still fighting." More rounds tore through the enemy formation. The ships tried to scatter, but they were too bunched up. Every shot hit something. Every missile found a target. Pilot launched from her carrier in her fighter craft. Around her, 200 other fighters did the same. They accelerated hard, pulling forces that would have killed most species. Humans could handle it. They had evolved for this. "Gold Squadron on me," she transmitted. "We're going for their command ship." They launched their own fighters, energy-based vessels that moved like streaks of light. They were fast, beautiful, and completely unprepared for what hit them. Human fighters had guns. Simple, old-fashioned guns that fired metal bullets. When the fighters tried to dodge, squadrons simply filled the space with lead. Bullets don't care about skill or speed. Enough of them will hit something. Fighter after fighter exploded. The survivors tried to flee, but the human pilots were relentless. They had trained in Earth's gravity, making high-speed turns that would have crushed the lightly built. They flew through explosions, dodged debris, and kept firing. Locked onto the command ship. It was huge, 3 times bigger than Sol's hammer, covered in weapons and shields. But it was also slow. All fighters concentrate fire on the command ship's bridge. Use the armor-piercing rounds. Her squadron obeyed. 200 fighters opened fire at once. The command ship's shields held for almost 3 seconds before the kinetic weapons overwhelmed them. Bullets tore through the hull, through the command deck, through everything. The command ship went dark, dead in space. On Sol's hammer, Captain watched the tactical display. The formation was collapsing. Ships were trying to flee, but the human destroyers were faster. They hunted down the stragglers, firing missiles that simply didn't miss. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet," the communications officer said. "It's the—" "Put it through." A voice came through, speaking in broken mathematical code that the computer struggled to translate. But the emotion was clear. Disbelief, hope, joy. How are you doing this? Who are you?" Admiral responded in the same mathematical language. "We're from Earth. You sent us a distress call." We answered. There was silence on the other end, then something that might have been crying. But there was no time for emotion. The battle was still raging. Sergeant and his Marines were in boarding pods, waiting for their moment. When a cruiser's shields went down, they launched. The pods accelerated hard, slamming into the alien ship's hull. Explosive charges blew holes in the metal. The Marines poured through. The inside were tall and thin, built for low gravity. They carried energy weapons that hummed and glowed. When they saw the humans, they opened fire. Energy beams splashed against the Marines' armor. It scorched the plating but didn't penetrate. The Marines raised their assault rifles and returned fire. Bullets tore through the like paper. The aliens had never faced physical projectiles before. Their bodies couldn't handle it. In seconds, the corridor was clear. "Move forward, secure the bridge," ordered. The Marines advanced through the ship, clearing room after room. They tried to stop them. They set up defensive positions, used heavier weapons, even tried hand-to-hand combat. Nothing worked. The humans were stronger, tougher, and far more experienced at violence. Earth had taught them well. Squad reached the bridge. The captain stood in the center, surrounded by officers. When he saw the humans, his eyes widened. "What are you?" he asked in his own language. The Marines' translators converted it. "We're," replied. Then he signaled his squad, "Take them prisoner. Command wants intelligence." Within 2 hours, the battle was over. 312 ships destroyed, 197 captured, only 28 escaped. The human fleet had lost 4 destroyers and suffered damage to a dozen other ships. 137 casualties. It was painful, but it was victory. Admiral broadcast to the fleet, "Stand down from combat alert. Begin rescue operations for survivors. And someone get me a line to the— I think we need to have a conversation." Captain sat in his command chair, looking at the debris field that surrounded them. This was first contact. not with words or diplomacy, but with weapons and violence. "Sir," his first officer said quietly, "what have we done?" Thought about the question. They had saved an entire species. They had destroyed an empire's fleet. They had announced humanity's presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. "We answered the call," he said finally. "Whatever happens next, at least we did that." On the planet below, they looked up at the sky and wept. The blockade was gone. The burning had stopped. And in orbit above them were ships from a species they had never met who had crossed the stars to save them. Earth had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first shuttle from Earth landed on the 3 hours after the battle ended. Doctor stepped out onto alien soil for the first time, surrounded by armed Marines. She didn't know what to expect. What she found was a crowd of thousands. They were tall and elegant, with long limbs and skin that shimmered in their sun's light. They looked fragile, like they might break if you touched them too hard. When they saw step off the shuttle, they fell silent. Was short by their standards, compact and dense. She moved with the careful control of someone who had grown up under crushing gravity. She looked like a predator wrapped in a space suit. Then one stepped forward. She was older, with silver markings on her face. She spoke in the mathematical language they had been using. "You came, we didn't think anyone would come." Responded in the same language, though her voice was rough compared to the musical tones. "We received your message. We came as fast as we could." The elderly approached slowly, carefully. She was the matriarch, the leader of what remained of her people. Her name was Ara, and she was crying. "How did you defeat them? They have conquered 47 species. No one has ever stopped them." Didn't know how to explain Earth. How did you tell someone about a planet that spent millions of years trying to kill everything on it? A world with gravity so strong that it crushed bones, weather so violent it destroyed cities, and predators so deadly that prey species had to become killers just to survive. "We come from a difficult world," she said finally. "It made us strong." Ara reached out with one long, delicate hand, extended her own. When they touched, the matriarch gasped. His hand was so much stronger, the grip like iron even though she was being gentle. "What is your world like?" Ara asked. Over the next hours, tried to explain Earth. She showed them pictures of mountains that reached into the sky, oceans so deep no light touched the bottom, storms that could level forests. She told them about ice ages that killed most life on the planet, asteroid impacts that reset evolution, volcanoes that changed the climate for centuries. They listened in horror and fascination. "How do you survive such a place?" one of them asked. "We adapt, we fight, we never give up," smiled sadly. "Your world is paradise compared to ours. You evolved in peace, we evolved in war." Meanwhile, Captain was coordinating with the defense forces. They barely had any. Their weapons were designed for hunting small animals, not fighting wars. Their ships were cargo vessels and exploration craft, not warships. "We can help you," said through a translator. "We can teach you to defend yourselves." The military commander looked uncertain. "We are not warriors. We never have been." "You don't have to be warriors. You just need to be able to protect yourselves when warriors come for you." Pulled up designs for simple kinetic weapons. "These are basic firearms. Your factories can make them. Your people can learn to use them. When they come back, you'll be ready." "Will they come back?" Looked at the alien commander with sympathy. "Yes, eventually. Empires don't forgive defeats like this." But the immediate threat was over, and they began to rebuild. Human engineers helped them repair damaged infrastructure. Medical teams treated the wounded. Supply ships brought food and materials. Admiral watched it all from orbit and knew it wasn't over. The battle had sent signals across the galaxy. Dozens of species now knew that someone had defeated and more importantly, they knew about Earth. The first response came 2 days later. A massive ship emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. It was unlike anything the humans had seen before, covered in symbols and broadcasting on every frequency. "It's a diplomatic vessel," Lieutenant Sora reported, "from something called the Galactic Council." "Are they hostile?" Admiral asked. "No, sir, they're asking permission to approach. They want to talk." The Admiral looked at Doctor, who had just returned from the planet. "You're the first contact specialist. This is your show." Ambassador arrived from Earth on a fast courier ship. He was a career diplomat, someone who had spent years preparing for the moment humanity would meet alien civilizations. He had never imagined it would happen like this. The Galactic Council ship was enormous. Its crew represented dozens of different species. When boarded with Doctor and a small guard detail, they were escorted to a massive chamber filled with aliens of every imaginable type. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that his mind struggled to understand what he was seeing. Things with tentacles, things made of crystals, things that seemed to exist partially outside of normal space. A being that looked like it was made of light floated forward. The translator identified it as the council speaker. "You are from Earth," it said, not a question, a statement. "Yes," replied. "We received a distress call from the..." We responded by destroying a battle fleet. The speaker's tone was impossible to read. "The Dominion has terrorized this region of space for 3 centuries. The Council has debated intervention for just as long. We have done nothing." Another being stepped forward. This one looked reptilian, covered in scales. "And then you arrive, unknown, unregistered. You annihilate an entire fleet in hours. How?" Doctor answered, "We evolved on a. It made us capable of things that species from gentler worlds cannot do." The crystal being said, "We have records of such planets, worlds so hostile that they kill most species that try to colonize them. You evolved naturally on such a world." "Yes." The chamber erupted in discussion. Species talking in dozens of languages, all translated simultaneously by the Council's systems, could hear the fear in their voices. "They could threaten us all. Are unstable, violent. We should quarantine their system." The representative, who had been silent until now, spoke up. He was tall and armored with cold eyes. "These humans are dangerous. They attacked without provocation. They should be eliminated before they become a threat to civilized species." Felt anger rise in his chest. "Without provocation, you were genociding them. They were in our territory. They refused to submit. That is how the galaxy works, human. The strong conquer the weak." "Not while we're around," said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Every alien eye turned to him. Took a breath and spoke to the entire council. "Yes, yes, we're strong and we're capable of violence, but we're also capable of mercy, compassion, and courage. When we heard the crying for help, we didn't debate for 3 centuries. We didn't form committees or take votes. We built ships, we crossed the stars, and we saved them. That's who we are. That's what Earth created. We're people who answer distress calls." The council speaker floated closer. "Your words are noble, but you have revealed yourselves to be a military power unlike anything we have seen in. What are your intentions?" "To go home," said. "To protect our friends, to stand against tyranny, nothing more." But before the council could respond, every ship's sensors went wild. A massive fleet was emerging from faster-than-light travel, ship after ship after ship. Lieutenant Sora's voice came through on the emergency channel. "Admiral, we have a problem. Fleet inbound. 2,000+ vessels." Ambassador looked at the council speaker. "I guess we're about to prove our intentions right now." The council's chamber erupted into chaos as every species realized the same thing. They had come for revenge. And this time, they had brought their entire armada. The armada filled the space around the system like a swarm of locusts. 2,314 ships, all armed, all hungry for revenge. The human fleet of 49 vessels looked tiny in comparison. On the council ship, Ambassador watched the tactical display and felt his stomach drop. The math was impossible. They couldn't win this. The Admiral's voice came through on all frequencies. "Surrender the humans to us for execution. Do this, and we will spare the rest of you. Refuse, and you all die." The council speaker turned to, "This is your fault. You provoked them." "We saved the," doctor shot back. "What would you have done? Watch them die?" "Yes," the crystal being said quietly, "because that is safer than war." Admiral's face appeared on the communication screen. "Ambassador, get back to the fleet. We're preparing for combat." "Admiral, there are too many. We can't win this." "Probably not, but we're going to try anyway. That's what humans do." The council chamber filled with arguments. Some species wanted to surrender the humans immediately. Others debated. A few stayed silent, watching to see what would happen. Then one being stood up. It was small, covered in fur, with large eyes. The translator identified it as a representative from the humans saved us," it said in a quiet voice. "When no one else would, when the council debated and did nothing, they came, they fought, they died for us." They looked around at the other species. "If you surrender them, you prove that they are right, that the strong do whatever they want, that mercy and courage mean nothing." Another species stood, then another, not all of them, but enough. "We will not surrender the humans," the council speaker announced. "We will stand with them." The Admiral's response was simple, "Then you will all die." The armada advanced, 2,000 ships moving as one, weapons charging, shields at maximum. The human fleet moved to intercept. Captain on Sol's Hammer, commander on the carrier's Pride, dozens of other ships. They formed a wall between thee and the planet below. "This is insane," first officer said. "Yes," agreed, "but someone has to do it." The council species that had chosen to fight joined the formation. 300 ships total, facing down 2,000. The odds were still terrible, but they were better. Admiral gave the order. "All ships, weapons free. Make every shot count for Earth, for everyone who ever needed help and got none." The battle began. The human fired first, launching tungsten death across the void. Shields flickered and failed. Ships exploded, but there were so many of them. For every ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. Energy weapons from the fleet lanced through space, hitting human ships. The armor held, but it was taking damage. Hull breaches were reported. Life support failing on several decks. People dying. Pilot launched with her squadron. Around her, every human fighter took to space. They dove into the formation like sharks, firing guns that the enemy still couldn't counter. But they had learned. They used numbers, surrounding the fighters, overwhelming them with sheer volume of fire. Swingman exploded beside her. Then another. She kept flying, kept firing, because that's what you did. That's what Earth had taught her. On Sol's Hammer, Captain watched as the ship's armor failed. "All hands brace for impact." An energy beam tore through the hull, ripping open 3 decks. Atmosphere vented into space. Alarms screamed. People screamed. "Seal those sections. Reroute power to weapons," ordered. If they were going to die, they'd die fighting. Sergeant and his Marines were boarding enemy ships again. Their pod had punched through a dreadnought's hull. They fought through corridors, killing everything they met. They were starting to learn to fight humans, but they still couldn't match them in close combat. "Plant the charges," ordered. "Blow this ship and move to the next one." His squad set explosive charges on the ship's reactor. They had 2 minutes to evacuate before it detonated. They made it with 30 seconds to spare, launching back into space as the dreadnought exploded behind them. But the tide was turning against humanity. Too many ships, too many weapons. The human fleet was being destroyed piece by piece. Then something changed. The council species that had stayed silent started moving. Ships that had been watching joined the battle, not all of them, but dozens, then hundreds. A species that looked like walking trees used biological weapons that ate through hulls. A species made of energy fields disrupted the enemy's communications. The reptilian species that had questioned humanity earlier dove into the fight with weapons that were old but effective. Despite their peaceful nature, launched every ship they had. They couldn't fight well, but they could ram. They could sacrifice themselves. And they did, throwing their vessels at ships to give the humans better shots. "The galaxy is standing up," Doctor said from the council ship. She was crying. "They're finally standing up." The battle raged for 6 hours, space filled with debris, bodies, and the flash of weapons fire. The human fleet was down to 23 ships, but the armada was broken, their formation scattered, their admiral dead, their ships fleeing. Admiral, bleeding from a head wound, gave the order, "Cease fire, let them run, they've learned their lesson." The surviving ships jumped to faster-than-light speeds and disappeared. They left behind 900 destroyed vessels and a reputation in ruins. The human fleet limped back to They had lost 30 ships, 4,000 people dead, twice that many wounded. It was a victory, but it had cost them dearly. Ambassador returned to the council chamber. The species there looked at him with new eyes. Fear, yes, but also respect. "You asked what our intentions were," said. "I'll tell you. We intend to protect those who can't protect themselves. We intend to stand against tyranny. We intend to answer every distress call we hear, no matter the cost." The council speaker floated forward. "You realize what you've done. You've changed the balance of power in the galaxy. The Dominion will never recover from this defeat. Other empires will see it as weakness. There will be wars." "There were already wars," Doctor said. "You just weren't fighting them." The speaker was silent for a long moment. Then it made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret. "The Galactic Council formally recognizes Earth and invites humanity to join as full members. We also recognize that the galaxy needs what you offer: protection, courage, the willingness to fight for others. Some of us are afraid of you," the crystal being added. "You are dangerous, violent, unpredictable." "Yes," agreed. "But we're also loyal, compassionate, and brave. Take the whole package or take nothing." The council voted. It was unanimous. Earth was welcomed. Captain stood on the bridge of Sol's Hammer and looked at the planet below. They were celebrating, their cities lit up with joy. They were free, and they would never be slaves again. "Was it worth it?" his first officer asked, gesturing to the damage reports, the casualty lists, the cost of victory. "Thought about the distress call, about the message that had crossed the stars asking for help that they never thought would come." "Yes," he said, "it was worth it." On Earth, people watched the news feeds from space. They saw the battle footage. They saw the destruction. They saw what humanity had accomplished. Some were proud. Some were scared. All of them understood that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and they had announced themselves not as victims or merchants or explorers, but as something the galaxy desperately needed and had never expected. Protectors, guardians, warriors who fought for others instead of themselves. They had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Admiral sent one final message to Earth before beginning the long journey home. "Mission accomplished. They are safe. Earth has allies now. Recommend we start building more ships. Something tells me we're going to need them." He was right. Across the galaxy, species that had been terrorized for centuries were looking up at the stars and thinking the same thought. Maybe if they sent a distress call, someone would answer. Maybe there was hope after all.